Police officers of Reddit, what was your they could have gotten away with it if they had kept their mouth shut moment? I was asked to help keep peace while two probation officers searched a guy's house. Before everyone gets upset, in most jurisdictions, you have to submit to a search of your person and your home if you're on probation. During the search, a PO lifted the probationer's mattress and said monotonously, "Wow." The probationer got upset and said, "Yeah, it's fucking meth and a gun, arrest me, I don't give a fuck." Turns out the PO found a huge dildo, but after the guy opened his mouth, the PO lifted the mattress more and found a bunch of individually wrapped grams of meth and a Glock 17. The PO said that seeing the dildo was enough for him to ignore the mattress, but because the guy said something, he kept looking. That guy's attitude and his need to open his mouth got him 10 years in prison. A cousin of a friend of mine travels around the state to take in deadbeat dads. Gets to one place, a 4-year-old kid is home, dad isn't. So the cop starts talking to the kid, making sure he's okay and such. After a bit of this, kid says to cop, "Wanna see my dad's secret garden?" Takes him to a closet with a false back, opens it up to see a small pot farm. Guy gets home to a few cop cars and a few charges. Not a cop but a witness. During college, my friends and I would hang out outside and smoke hookah. Frequently we would invite strangers who passed by to join, or campus police would casually chat with us as they made their rounds. So one time a group of freshmen walked past and asked to join. After about 15 minutes the campus police car rolls up and the freshmen get visibly nervous. We tell them calm down, the cops are chill. As soon as the cop gets out of the car, one freshman bolts and makes it about 20 feet before the cop tackles him. We all clap and heckle the kid. Upon searching him, the cop finds a bunch of weed, then he says, "You realize prior to running, I had no reason to be suspicious. I just wanted to talk to my friends over there," and points at us. The cop ends up writing a ticket and sends him off. I'm a nice guy, and I enjoy a chat. You'd be surprised how much this lowers someone's guard. Stood in full uniform, people will just start telling you things that could get them in trouble. Multiple times I had to tell people to shut up. It was usually petty things like where they hid their weed stash, that they'd got a bifta in their pocket for later. Not really worth the time and effort to deal with how skeezed we were. One time a guy really got himself in trouble by effectively telling me he had stolen property on him. I had to act on that one. Currently watching Live PD, and the guy told the officer I have caffeine pills in my back pocket, gets them out, puts them on the hood, everyone's chill. Dude then comes clean and says it's Molly, and the officers look at each other and go, "Do we even have a test kit for that?" Other officer says no. Dude's face just shows he should have kept his mouth shut. He wouldn't have gotten away with it, but a patron of the bar that my sister worked at many years ago was stopped by the troopers while driving along next to the highway, in the ditch. His explanation: "Officer, I'm way too drunk to be on the road." No, a police officer, but I do know of this house in my local village that was a notorious drug den. The police came to search the place but couldn't find anything. As they were leaving, the lovely owner yelled at them that they should have brought the drug dogs. So yeah, they came back a few days later with the drug-sniffing dogs and found huge amounts of drugs hidden away. Absolute morons. Not me but my dad. My dad was in an Army helicopter unit assigned to local police to search for marijuana plants being grown in the rural parts of my state in the 1980s. One day, they found a decently sized gaggle of marijuana plants located just off the property of a farm. They landed the helicopter on the farm and talked to the farmer, asking him if he knew that someone was growing weed near his property. The farmer got scared and immediately confessed that they were his plants. He was arrested by the police. Oddly enough, if the farmer would have played dumb, the army and the police were just going to remove the weed and leave. Absolutely never admit to any crime without a lawyer present. Just because you know you did it and the cops know you did it doesn't mean it'll hold up in court or that they'll think it's worth the time to prosecute it. You don't need them to think you're a good guy who made an understandable mistake. You need to stay out of a cage. Keep your mouth shut. The only word you should be saying is lawyer. In college, a buddy and I drove out to a house party, only for it to get busted as soon as we arrived. In an attempt to show my friend how cool I was, I started antagonizing one of the officers from the passenger seat of my buddy's car that was parked on the side of the street. Telling him that I'd send him the address to the next party, that kind of thing. We go back and forth until the cop asks my friend move his car into the driveway. He asks for identification and runs my license. After about 30 minutes, he hands me a max fine ticket for a seatbelt violation. Clever bastard saw I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so he had my friend move his car a couple feet so he could ticket me. Not a cop but have a buddy that is. Nothing too crazy, but has had countless moments where has tried to give people a break or all they had to do was sit down and be quiet, but they end up talking themselves into jail. Recently had a dude he pulled over that was a bit over the limit but not too much, so he was gonna let a friend pick him up instead of arresting him. Guy got to talking and basically revealed driving under the influence was something he did fairly regularly. A single mistake is one thing, but my buddy decided the best chance at getting him to stop would be learning this lesson the hard way. Former cop here. We always had a statement that we used if we ever got in trouble, and it applies to anyone. No poly, no waiver, no statement. Basically, never consent to take a polygraph. Never waive your rights and never make a statement. You may think you're doing yourself a favor by answering questions and trying to be helpful, but more often than not you'll end up digging your own grave. Be polite about it but respectfully refuse anything until you've spoken to a lawyer. The absolute best example of this has to be Dennis Rader, aka the BTK killer. For those of you unfamiliar with BTK, it stood for bind, torture, kill, and he was a notorious serial killer spanning several decades from 1974 until 1991, and he's responsible for at least 10 murders. Anyway, BTK went silent for a long time and nobody had heard anything up until 2004 when he started sending in letters to the police and media again. In 2005 he sends a letter to the police asking if he sends in a floppy disk will they be able to trace it. They tell him no, so the doofus sends them a disk. They are able to recover metadata from a deleted Word document from the disk which contained his name and the church where he was president of their council. They were easily able to find him after that, and he was arrested and eventually given 10 consecutive life sentences. He probably could have gotten away with all those murders if he would have just stayed silent. Not a cop. I had a roommate in college that was no friend of mine. He got in a fight at a bar and was kicked out. He tried to go back into the bar and got thrown out again, but a cop happened to be driving by the second time. Cop told him to relax or he was going to be arrested. He told the cop to arrest him. Cop handcuffs him and puts him in the back of the cop car. Roommate then started banging on the window. Cop then recuffed him with his hands behind his back. Roommate's stupidity carried on for the next couple months. He was supposed to go to court over the whole thing, but didn't show up. Police showed up at his job, cuffed him and brought him to court. Judge told him he would have just received a slap on the wrist, but he now had to send him to jail for a couple days. He was scheduled to report to jail a week or two later, and he didn't show up for that either. By this time, he disappeared. I never saw the guy again. I've had countless times where dudes give consent to search them or the vehicle and they end up having drugs. It baffles me why you would let me search if you don't have to, knowing there's some damn heroin in your car. LML. Cop is in a gas station convenience store when an obviously hammered guy stumbles in alone. The officer looks at him and asks, "You didn't drive here, just a passenger, right?" Drunk guy confirms and then proceeds to go get into his car and start pull away as the officer is still watching. All he had to do was go wait 5 minutes in the bathroom or walk down the street, instead got a DUI. Okay, so we had a DUI accident where a guy kept driving straight into the woods into a tree because his GPS was predicting a future street. He walked back to his hotel room and left his check-in papers in the car. So we go to the hotel and go to his room and knock on the door. He did not have to answer. But he did. He was pretty clearly drunk. I asked him if he had anything to drink since the accident. He did not have to answer, or he could have told us that he drank after the accident. He said, "No, I haven't had anything to drink since the accident." And where I'm from you have 24 hours to report a property damage only accident. So it wasn't even a hit and run. So as I'm locking the guy up, he tells me has a lawyer. I told him I hope you're not a defense attorney. But in his defense, he was drunk.